You gotta get up. Body me wake up and make a move. Oh. 'Cause the world will never see you until you do. They no really care, see they do you. Oh. So make you show them, baby. Oh yeah, show them the real you. Oh yeah, show them what you get. No, don't let them say what you not, I want you strong, oh. You can't break, no. You want more than 1,000 reasons why. You don't need to perfect, baby. 'Cause nobody perfect, darling. No, there's nobody in the world will be like you.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Touch a Shell show with Toyin and the Gang. And yours sincerely, Toyin Adeshola. And this is a production of Sickle Cell Advocacy and Management Initiative, supported by the Public Affairs section of the U.S. Consulate. This program is an offshoot of a regular radio program, Touch a Shell show, and it holds every Wednesday on Star FM 101.5 at 7 o'clock. And today we're going to be talking about another very interesting subject under the Finding Your Voice series, which is called My Voice, My Weapon. And I'm going to bring on our guests and do a short intro of them, and they'll tell you more about themselves as we come on. So the first person I'm bringing on is Peter Oshikoya. Hey, Peter, how are you?
Good evening, Ma. How are you doing, Ma?
Good evening. Great to have you. So, Peter is the project coordinator of W Rescue at Sickle Cell Advocacy and Management Initiative. He's also a sickle cell warrior and advocate. And I always call him a man of many parts because he's always everywhere with his voice talking about sickle cell. All right. So he will tell us more about himself, but I'll bring on our next guest, and I believe she's ready. Hello, Buki, are you there? Hi, Buki, how are you? Buki Bolariwa is I'll get it. Should I say the coordinator of Haima? Yes, I will try to get the names right, and also part of Sickle Cell Aid Foundation, another non-profit with base in Abuja, but they have their steps all over Nigeria. So we're going to be talking. Let's just first of all talk about ourselves. Living with sickle cell, how was it growing up? In a nutshell, what was it like? And I'll start with Buki.
I am mute. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, okay, now I can hear you now.
Okay, so growing up for me was like up and down. It really just depended, like, you know how it is with sickle cell. There were some phases that were really good, and then some phases where you're like in and out of hospital. Alhamdulillah, I was mostly triggered by events. So I wasn't the kind of person that had like ongoing issues. It was always like something was happening. I remember growing up, my parents were always trying to tell me not to get excited. Even till now, my friends always tell me that, you, good news, bad news, you just be like this, like no up, down, because that was usually what triggered my crisis. So I can, like excitement, stress, any kind of those kinds of things. So I remember growing up the night before my WAEC exam.
Mm.
Maths was the subject that used to really scare me. I had this amazing teacher, God rest his soul, Mr. Thompson. He was amazing. Maths used to give me anxiety actually. Because every time I see numbers, I'm just like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. And he used to be like, no, don't worry, you can do it. So he came that day, taught me up until like 7 p.m. We did past questions. He said, oh yeah, go and rest. I said, okay. But when I got to my room, I was just like, I want to revise everything one more time. So I didn't sleep. I was up until 4 a.m. doing past questions, doing everything. I was now ready. I was like, no, this one, I'm going to fire them. I had done all the, that. Do you guys remember that book that used to have all the past questions from 96 or
Yes.
something crazy like that? I
So
did all past
2009.
questions. Yes, I was from 2000. Like I did everything. I was ready. So 4 a.m. I said, okay, I've studied enough. Let me sleep and wake up by 7 o'clock to get ready for class. I was not even on the bed for 30 minutes. As I just put my head down, I got this kind of pain that was just like, okay, this is serious. And so like I had to call my mom, everything. Then she was not like, do I want to do it or not? I said I still want to do it. So I went to school. I did it in my sick bay. They brought all the luckily I went to a good school. It was private. I had those
I was going to
facilities.
say that.
Yeah, yeah. We had a very nice
Free
sick
school,
bay.
okay. I mean, they don't allow uni.
Yes, no, it was. I'm not gonna lie. My parents tried, So I had a private. The nurse was with me throughout. My mom was outside in the car, and I wrote the math test in the sick bay, and I got a B. So it's just for me. It was always like I can tell you so many stories like that. There was one time we had a field trip to Jos. There was I don't know if you guys have heard of the Jos Hills. So,
Yes.
all the students, yeah, Jos is so beautiful.
Absolutely.
It's really a shame how Jos is now, but Jos, I mean, then it's stunning, the hills. So, we went on a school trip. I can't forget my mom. She was just like halfway. Should I let her go? Should I not let her go? I was begging. I was like, please, all my friends are going. I'll be the only one that is not going. She was not like, you must not overexert yourself. You must not. My dad called me as well. He's always like overexcitement. I'm like, I'm not excited. Oh, I'm not excited. I'll nothing. So when we got to Jos, the road trip was long because the road is bad, everything. We got there, I was okay. The first few days I was okay. The last day we were now supposed to climb the rocks. And everybody was going to take the school picture on top of that rock. I'll not be the only one that was not in the picture. And I went all the way I said, I'm going to climb it. I'm going to they had to after I climbed it, they had to send car from Kaduna to come and pick me to take me back. So it was always like I said, events, just wanting to be a child, wanting to do what all your friends are
Yeah.
doing. That was always what my main, issues and triggers were.
So for Peter, how was it for you? Was it almost the same or yours was different?
No, well, growing up, I was always one not to do this, don't do this, don't play ball, don't be too playful and all of that. But I know that growing up, I think to an extent, I went from playing ball to fetching water because in my house you can't do it without walking. You have to walk. So I grew up learning about how to manage my health and which helped to a large extent in reducing my episodes of crisis. Not as if I don't used to have crisis, but it reduced it to a very large extent. So growing up, going to school, I always had my grandmom with me. So and I knew so well that okay, you have to take water, you have to take this. If you are tired, you need to rest and all of that. So it was a very good guide for me, which didn't make me have all those episodes
Incidences.
of crisis. Yes.
But did you find you are SC? Did you find you had because I know it's a conversation that is ongoing that people with SC don't face as much issues as
Yeah,
people.
I just saw it on Twitter now. Like I was so angry when I saw it on Twitter. No, 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 no.
That's an old. This Twitter thing is just because of today's which will come to, but it's something that has been said. It's a narration that I even growing up, I learned that as a narration that people with SC don't have as much crisis. That what they suffer mostly from is the leg ulcer issues and all that. So growing up, did you experience anything like that? Did you think, okay, compared, I don't know how many people with sickle cell you knew, but did you compare to them, did you think that you didn't have as much issues as the persons with SS?
Okay, yes. Growing up, I I to a large extent, then I used to believe that people who are SC don't have as much issues as SS, and they didn't have as much crisis. But I found out that
Hmm.
relatively to an extent is true because what people majorly know is that the pain crisis. Now, it doesn't only have to do with the pain crisis. It's not only the pain crisis that determines if you're a sickle cell warrior or not. There are other kinds of crises that you have aside. So I grew up having a whole lot of headaches. Now, for people who are SCs or people who have disease generally, tend to have a lot of migraine. So I grew up having migraine most sometimes, and it's usually so painful that you just have to rest. So I remember growing up while I went. So I was so stubborn in school. At home, my mom had to transfer me to Navy School in Bara Bekuta. Now in Ibara Bekuta, we were made to do all kinds of jobs and all of that. So we had an incident where I lost a friend who was a sickle cell warrior due to the stress, and that was just S3. On getting back home from school, okay, in school I used to have mild crisis. I'll go to sick
Oh, wow.
bay and come back. Yeah, so I'll go to sick bay and come back. They'll treat me in sick bay and come back, only for me to come back from finishing JSS3 YEC, and I just fell ill straight up as I was landing in Lagos. I fell ill straight up. I was at home for 2 weeks straight. I could not walk. I could not do anything. I was in serious pain crisis. So yes, one of the things that brought me to advocacy was that I saw that people were mixing these things up. That somebody doesn't have the regular anemia pain crisis does not mean the person is not having other kinds of crisis, or because the physical attributes you are seeing is not what you see in SC doesn't mean that this person is not going through crisis, so, or going
Yeah.
through his own form of pain. So which is one of the reasons that actually brought me into um, advocacy. So, well, I did to a large extent to correct the notion, but it still seems that there is a whole lot of belief around it. So we just try our best to continue education.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll exactly and I'll bring that question to both of you. And finding your voice. When was the first opportunity, would you say, that you had to speak up for issues surrounding sickle cell? Because let's face it, a lot of us don't talk about it, whether to our next door neighbor. I'm not even telling you to shout it out to the whole world, but a lot of us don't even talk about it to our relatives or our neighbors or anything like that that we've known for a while. So when was the first opportunity you say, yeah, this time I must speak out? This is my opportunity. I must start speaking out. And I'll ask Peter first.
Well, so I was okay while growing up because my mom lives with sickle cell too. She's HBSS, and I grew up seeing her having pain. I had a younger sister who was living with sickle cell too, and I grew up seeing them having pain. So I kind of my grandmama had to say, okay, come, you need to. I was inquisitive about my health, so she said, okay, there is a place where they have meetings every Saturday, and you learn more about your health. So I started learning, and one day I think they started saying that I used to win drugs. I used to win drugs. I used to win questions all the time. Okay, come and share your experience. I tell people I don't have experience to share. I don't have experience. Now it's not as if I don't see the experiences. I don't have a personal experience to share. So I remember Henry of blessed memory saying that, come, you need to speak out. You need to let other people know that, come, you've come this far, you've learned so much. Help people understand themselves. Help people see that there's so many things aside living with sickle cell and all of that. So I started sharing my story. So started small, okay, I told them because I was shy then. But now I'm outspoken like this. But then I'll just be okay. This is what I do. This is what I do, and all of that. So I started from the community where I've been learning to share my experience, which I now found that I was given hope. Like, oh, okay, so you live with citizen, it could be like this. You know this, you do this, you do this, and so I started from where I've been learning. That was the first place I started to advocate before I created an online platform to educate people and share experiences.
Bookie, was your own a person or a group? How did you first start talking about it?
So mine is kind of split into two. I would say that my husband is actually the person that pushed me to talk more about my story and to share like my personal experience with sickle cell. But when I first started advocacy properly was in law school, where I met Nkechi, and we started SCAF in Nigerian Law School in Buari. And at that point, when I moved back to Nigeria, I knew that I wanted to do something about sickle cell because I had experienced what's like really good healthcare in the UK as a student,
Yeah.
and really just seeing like how things could be. And how things should be. And then I was also introduced to hydroxyurea, which really changed my life. And so for me, it was more about like when I moved back to Nigeria, I was like, okay, how can I then do something about it? And luckily, I met Nkechi and we started SCAF. And at that point, for the first few years, I was doing advocacy, supporting people with living with sickle cell. But I wasn't really talking about myself, mostly because I felt privileged, right? Like it's like most of the people that we were talking to and we're advocating for were struggling to buy basic malaria medicines, and that was never my struggle. Like alhamdulillah, financially, the financial aspect of it wasn't really a challenge, and that was really how
Mm.
like what pushed me and Nkechi to start it, because Nkechi has 3 siblings with sickle cell, so you can imagine, they were always in and out of hospital bills. And then we were just thinking, like, if you think about like how much we spend on healthcare. So imagine the average person that is just struggling to get by and then having sickle cell on top of it. So at that point, we were just talking about sickle cell in general. And then my husband, who was just my boyfriend at that time, used to say, oh, you're going on the radio. Like if I'm going on the radio, I'll be like, I'm going on the radio, listen to me. Or I'm going on TV, listen to me. And he would listen. I'd be like, yeah, but you're talking about sickle cell in general. Why don't you talk about yourself? Why don't you talk about your story? And I'd be like, yeah, but I come from a privileged background. Why would I be now? Like, I felt like I was rubbing it in people's faces that, oh, yeah, if I needed to go to the hospital, I'll go. Like, there was no... It was now then I'd meet people that were in crisis, and the reason they couldn't go to the hospital is because there was no money. That was never my story.
Yeah.
But he was like, no, you need to just share your story, you need to share your experience, and people will be able to relate to you. And I think that since then, which is like about 5-6 years ago, I've been like openly talking about it, openly talking about my challenges. When I had I was telling everybody about it as well. So yeah, I would say that that's how I started.
So yeah. So but generally I find that okay, we've been going about finding your voice series this past sickle cell awareness month, and I generally find that people are always shy or afraid to talk about it. How did you guys how are you able to break that nervousness and timidity to be able to talk about it? Because is bad enough saying you want to come on radio or talk about it in a group, but even as I said, your next door neighbor, how did you first say that, no, I'm going to break this nervousness? I did it. Was it because of a particular incident, or you just felt the ignorance of people was too much that you just had to open your mouth and talk?
Well,
anybody can answer.
Yeah, my own was my husband. He's here laughing at me actually. Like, he was the one.
before you guys met, we were not even talking about it at all.
No, like I said, we were, but I wasn't talking about it from my personal perspective. I wasn't talking about,
Okay,
the series is about sharing your story. We were talking about sickle cell in
yes,
general, supporting people with sickle cell, the
yes.
issues, the symptoms, but it wasn't about talking about me and my personal experience. But he always said it after every kind of interview, and I did a lot of those kinds of things, and it was always like, yeah, but you need to talk about your story, and I think it also has to do with the fact that growing up, they used to tell us, you don't have to tell everybody you have sickle cell, just be quiet. In fact, when I first started
Exactly.
a few articles were published about me and sent to my mom, and she was like, why do you always have to shout that you have sickle cell? Why can't you just keep why can't you talk about the issues without talking about yourself? So I think I grew up hearing that, combined with my kind of feeling of like, you're from a privileged background, don't be talking too much about your personal experiences. I think it was those two things. But after the first time I shared my experience and the positive reactions and people wanting to ask, I mean, what I used to get that time was like, oh boy, you're so like, you don't look like you have sickle cell, you look like this, you look like that, that kind of thing. And it was always like those kinds of things that always made me a little bit more like willing to share and tell people that, people with sickle cell don't look a certain way. Don't feel like someone looks like this or doesn't look like this, then they have sickle cell. Who can look? I don't know if you know Oishola, but Oishola is chubby, and she's always getting people like. So it's really sharing your personal story is very important. I understand when people are shy or people are a little bit hold back. It's from our upbringing and things that we've seen or heard. But yeah, it takes time for you to get into that.
Yes, it does, and that's why I always talk about parents building the confidence of children as they grow up. At a young age, once you're able to talk about it, you don't talk about it at any age. But when you're now telling them, don't talk about it, don't let anybody know, it's none of their business. Da 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 da. But was it the same for you, Peter? Or you, because I know you are very energetic. Get go. I'm opening my mouth.
Well, the ignorance for me was too much, and so to an extent, I kind of saw face stigmatization, and I saw people go through stigmatization. I saw people say, "Oh, sickle cell people are thin, they have yellow eyes, they are like." So to an extent, okay, when I started out, like, okay, I was still a young child. I was still just telling people, okay, I live with sickle cell, like, you will die early, and I'm like, okay, I'll die early. What does that mean? Now, so which was what made me curious about, okay, I'll die early. I don't. It's not me. It's not meant for me. So I was curious to the extent that, okay, I said, as it stands now, I need to know about my health because I have to survive. I have to break this ignorance. It was too much that I decided I have to break it. Now I know that I started. It was still hard for me to start sharing my personal, because I found out over time that sharing your personal story gets people's attention. It gets people to want to know more. It gets people motivated. So I hear a lot of people. Okay, when I started out in the meeting, I used to see a lot of parents coming and they're afraid. Oh, my child will die. My child is skinny. My child is like, calm down, you'll be fine. My mom lives with sickle cell. She's SS and she's okay. My auntie lives with sickle cell and she's SS. She's okay. So please, your child will be fine. So it got me to want to know more, and I was able to break all those levels of stigmatization, the environment with education. What I used, my weapon then was just education, and the standing my giving holding my standard. This is what I want, because I know as I grew up into advocacy, I had my dad's parents say, why are you doing sickle cell all the time? This is I'm like, thank you, please. This is my life. I decide what I want to do with it, and you don't have a decision over what I do with my time. This is what gives me strength. You can't take me away from my strength just because you bore me. No, it's not possible. So I use education to break away from stigmatization, ignorance, and all of that.
Okay. But there comes a situation where, no matter how you talk, some people just
Okay.
don't get it. Has there come at any point in time, so somebody said like, okay, like this is that you die and somebody
So you are breaking.
coming to say all sorts of ridiculous things. Have there been any point in time that you use your voice stigmatizing need to just shout at the person? Oh, am I? Can you hear me now? Can both of you
Can
hear
you
me?
repeat that? Your network
Yeah,
was
please, can
going.
you repeat
Okay,
that
but
because we didn't hear you?
okay,
Yes,
okay. I
kind of.
said there come a time, like the example you gave of somebody telling you that, oh, sickle cell, do you cuckoo die early, or they will say something negative or stigmatize against you, that you had to use your voice and maybe tongue lash them, or just give them a. Am I still breaking up?
Yes, yes, you are still breaking up, kind of.
I kind of got the question. I think what you're asking, Toyin, is if there's ever been a point where you're raising awareness or in your advocacy journey and you get, really ridiculous questions or comments that makes you want to tongue lash someone.
Exactly,
Yes,
that you had
exactly.
to tongue lash someone for saying some stupid things. Have you had to use your voice in that way that what nonsense that like a particular incident that happened in a particular show, but the person kept quiet. But there's sometimes that, I mean, we're only human. There's sometimes that we may have had to raise our voice in such situations. Have you ever experienced that, or you've been able to like just ignore the person?
Well, I can I
Mm.
can I can answer this. So I believe that advocacy has to
Why
be
is people,
huh?
the way people are smiling?
Sorry?
Go ahead, please.
Oh, I didn't hear you, Toyin.
I said you should go ahead.
Okay. No, I was saying that I believe that
Oh gosh,
advocacy
I
has
just
to
want
be
to be like,
um gentle. Um because it's for so behaviors and messaging is often about consistency as opposed to like intensity. If that makes sense. So it's not about meeting somebody one time and shouting. To me, oh, this is my personal belief. It's more about repeating and repeating. And I remember I don't know if you guys know Professor Bayomi, when the Lagos State
Yes,
Commissioner for Health. Um
yes.
and he was talking about COVID, and he was basically just explaining that you have to teach and teach and teach and teach and don't get tired. So for me, it's not even about shouting; it's more about fatigue. Like, we've said this thing 100 times. So I think for me, that's even a bigger challenge. It's just like I'm tired, like of saying the same thing over and over.
exactly,
So yeah,
Well,
that
you
that
can't
that
be
is it for
tired.
and
me.
over
There was one
again.
instant though. I don't know if you remember, Toyin. There was a man that had an interview on, I think it was TVC, where he said raising a child with sickle cell and investing in a child with sickle cell is akin to
Otokai,
throwing
Cyril
water.
Otokai.
Yes,
I
it's akin to
remember we
throwing
had to do a
water
campaign
into.
against
It
that
was like,
woman.
Yeah, and I wrote a long article about it, about in response, which we published in this day.
Yeah.
And he then
Well
he
done,
then
well done, well done, well
responded
done.
saying, "Oh, I want to challenge you to a debate." Kiniko, I'm like, "Talon debate, pẹ̀lú ẹ." I was just like, just wrote the article and said my points, and that was it. And for me, that's how I would prefer to do advocacy. But Peter, I don't know if you
Well,
have the more military stance.
Well, okay, so when I started, I used to have military stand at the point because I
Mm.
used to just get annoyed, and because you tell them over and over and they're doing the same thing. In short, I still get people who are still, you tell them this is how you know they'll still do it because so I believe that because of how some of us were raised, we've come to have that strong feel that it takes a long time for you to break the yoke. So I knew when I started, yes, I used to get angry and like, come, hope you are serious. Are you serious at all? I've said this over and over again, and you are still doing the same thing. But over time, as I grew in advocacy, I found out that you just have to be calm with them, teach them at their own level of understanding. That way, you're able to catch them and get the passive message across. So, did you hear me?
Exactly. So,
Oh,
speaking
sorry.
of passing the message across, there's a question I've been. I talking? You're mute. You're
No,
mute,
there's a delay.
Bookie.
There's
You're
a
mute.
delay. Can you hear me now? Yeah,
Yes, I
there's a
can hear
delay.
you.
Okay. What I was saying, just to add to your point, Peter, is
Yes, I
about the
can
fact
hear you
that,
now. You are saying something.
yeah. Oh, Tony, your network is
Oh,
the
okay,
last.
okay, okay, okay.
What I was saying
Yes, I
was
can hear
that
you very.
even
Yes.
even with us as advocates, right? Don't forget that we're also learning. So it's very hypocritical
Mm.
to then start shouting and pushing your message to people. So I'll give you an example. When we first started, we used to just say AS marriage, no, no, no. We used to have teachers
No.
that would just say AS bad. Don't ever do it.
There's a
Break up.
particular flyer that goes around every time. No, it's
Yeah.
bad. It's this.
It's
It's
bad.
that.
We used to do those timetable.
You should.
A plus A times
Yes.
A, good.
X X
A
X X
times
X.
AS, very good. Do you understand? And now I look back at that, I'm like, wow, that was terrible messaging. Do you understand?
Yes,
So we've
exactly.
also grown in how we do it. And I'm really grateful to Sickle Cell Foundation as well, because a lot of our team members took the genetic counseling course. And then when we would be doing genetic counseling, we would tell people, no, you must not marry. But it also, we've learned that, no, you don't. We've also learned that you don't, with genetic counseling, you don't give
You don't
advice, right?
direct.
You give them don't direct. You give them all the information and let them make their choice. So isn't it hypocritical if I'm then now impatient when I'm teaching someone, when I'm learning every day? We're all learning every day.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I try to tell people who are now. So because I see a lot of flyers around AS and AS don't marry, AS and AC don't marry, CC and CC don't. I'm like,
Normally,
calm down.
like
See, once you
sent one
just
to you today. That same
just
flyer that's
once
always flying all over the place.
it's a black chat. So if these people are now okay, so because of that, we were just having a discussion in the office some weeks ago, and we were like, okay, so we are saying that AS and AS should not marry. What of people who are SS and SS getting married overseas? What of people who are SS and SS and are dating themselves? Where do we put them? And we said, okay, let's have a debate around it. Should SS and SS date themselves? And in short, I put it on my status, and everybody almost killed me. Peter, no! Why would you say this? Capital, no! I'm like, calm down, calm down. I'm a warrior myself. I'm coming from the aspect of a genetic counselor, so don't crucify me yet. Come and listen to the point and all of that. So I tell people who are advocating that are doing, I tell them, okay, if you have that option, it's better you say that they see a genetic counselor rather than tell them not to marry, because you don't direct. Because at the end of the day, you are not marrying the person's genotype, you are marrying the person as a person, because you are first human before your genotype. As love, God himself, who have created humanity, said, love your neighbor as you'd love yourself. So love at every point in time overrides any other thing. So
But let's face it,
we are growing. We are growing.
we live in a society where having a child, your biological child, is more emphasized. That's why people have this mindset. Because they don't look at
Yes, exactly.
the other person. I know some people who married and are adopted. They adopted. But people don't look at that. In fact, when I suggested it to somebody, I remember the person said, God forbid, why should I go and adopt another person's child? I mean, if I adopt at all, it will be my brother's child or my sister's child or something. It's because we still have that mindset that it's either the child must be biological child, and you cannot say you're not having. Some might said, I'm going to do away with a child. But we still live in a society where this is entrenched that if you are one, if you are not married, and two, if you don't have a child, it's like it's a sin. I want
Yes.
to tell somebody that if I go to heaven, God is not going to ask me where is my husband because that's not a prerequisite.
But all those things are changing. It's just that everything takes time. So, 100%. I have two friends who have no medical challenges and they have chosen not to have children. Perfectly fine. The guy works in Shell. He has a great job. She's perfectly healthy. And they were just like, we don't really want children. They live in Nigeria. They live in Port Harcourt. So it's not even like a foreign thing. Yes. I have two friends, not just her. I have another friend who she's only just had one child because of family pressure. And she said, Buki, I'm not having another child. I'm not. This one that I had was because of family. So I've done it and that's it. And if you think about that mindset shift, so if you look at things, what we always have to think about is that change happens in generation. So my grandmother, she had 12 children. About 3 of them died. When my mother was growing up, she was just like, I never want to have this plenty children. It's too much stress. I'm only going to have 4. That was what was involved that time. 4, 3, 5. Now, our generation, me and Peter, we can never have more than 2, maximum 3. Do you understand?
Yes, now 2 is too much. Self 1.
Yeah,
Have you trained the one way?
You're speaking from a lower, middle, upper class sentiment. Forget that one. People that
it's not. Don't. You have to think about the fact that change happens slowly and generationally. Yeah. So in the UK and European countries as well, right? It was average in the UK, it was average for women to get married by 22, 23. At about during the World War II and all those times. That's the time they were getting married. Most people were having 3, 4 children. Now, if you look at so it's just time. All those things will happen. It's just we have to just be patient and just keep pushing out the message and not get tired.
Yes, and yes, in addition to pushing out the message, we need to push the message right because I found out that because of our environment, factors like religion, how our families were brought up, they tend to believe that marriage is basically for childbearing, forgetting that childbearing is not the purpose of marriage. The purpose of marriage is companionship, and it can be companion to anybody, irrespective of the genotype, the race, the anything. So until we come to the standpoint where we are able to help our parents and the next generation understand that you are getting old does not mean that not everybody is destined to marry. Not everybody is destined to have a child. Now, people who are A and don't have children, what do we say about them? Until now, we have a cultural belief that children, you must have your own children. So I was kind of discussing with my mom some days ago, saying that, okay, can't you adopt a child? You said you wanted more children. Why can't you adopt? Ọlọ́run má jẹ́ kò lè dá ọmọ kí wọ́n lọ bí ọmọ àlè tí ìmọ̀ ibi tó ti wà ó lè jẹ́ ó lè ní bàbá ẹ̀. I'm like, well, what do you mean?
I say you don't know what spiritual problem the dad has brought.
I'm like, seriously? Because I don't understand. So sometimes when I get things like that, I'm like, okay, let's assume that you have a child. You give birth to a child and you decide to adopt, and your adopted child doesn't know is adopted, and your adopted child is doing far better than your own child. What do you say? What would you say? Would you say you didn't train your child well, or would you say that you as the father is spoiled or the mother is spoiled, and this person's mother from that I don't know his parents are doing awesomely well, or they were angels from heaven? I don't understand. So I just try to give them the options of, okay, this is this and this. What happens if this happens? So Well, we just need to continue our education. We can't stop now because there's still a lot to teach. There's still a lot of correction to be done, and it's not going to end
That's
in this
your
generation.
right.
It's going to be there. It's going to be there in the next generation to come. We just have to continue the education slowly, as Buki has said, slowly. Change happens slowly. You don't just wake up one day and say the person changed. The person has been learning and learning and learning, and you say, "Oh, wow, a fantastic change." So would continue and help people understand that come it's not by you're getting old. There's no you're getting old in marriage. You just have to get old and be happy that you are married and your husband is not treating you well. Your happiness is dependent on what other people think. That's not how marriage works, because we have been fooled about marriage. We've been told a whole lot of lies that you have to endure marriage instead of enjoy. So there are two E's of marriage now that we've been made to misbelieve: enjoy and endurance. Some people say that for you to enjoy your marriage, you must have a whole lot of years of endurance. I'm like, come, that's a shame, or that's a lie that we fed.
The fallacy.
For you to enjoy marriage, your endurance has to be little, because if you endure too much, your happiness would have died before you start enjoying the marriage, and the sweetness of marriage you won't enjoy. And this is what you pass on to your other children, that oh, marriage is to be endured, and it's affecting and affecting and affecting. So until you come to a standpoint that marriage is for your own happiness, your family does not decide who you marry. Your family does not decide that you are getting old, you should go and marry. No, because your happiness is not determined by your family or other people's opinion. So
Yeah, good point. Which
Kind
brings
of
me,
connected. There's a little
yes,
bit.
it's as if Peter, is your something banging on your headphones, your mic? It's as if there's something missing. Okay, stop now, whatever it is. Oh, it's back. Maybe it was
okay,
your mic.
Yeah,
can you
I'm
hear
sure
me
it's
now?
computer.
I can hear you, but the thing is
Yeah, I'm
back.
not sure if it's from
Okay.
Peter or if it's in
I
general.
think it's your mic. It's touching.
Yeah, I need to remove my Bluetooth. I think it's the Bluetooth that gave it. So am I audible?
Yeah, audible, but the thing is still there.
It's still there. Try and mute
Uh,
yourself. Let's see if we make it better.
I
If he moves himself, yeah, it's something
Yeah,
to
just
do with
just
the
just see
connection.
if it's from.
Is it connected to your phone?
yes, I've disconnected it.
Okay, I don't know why it's still going on. Okay, let's just go and continue. All right. My question now is: there are some warriors we know they live in denial, and they are dying at the same time. They are dying in silence because they don't want to admit that they have sickle cell, or they don't want to own up to somebody they have the sickle cell. Yet they know they have it. How do you address such issues? Because we've seen it that people just come up. Somebody can come up. I can see somebody I know is definitely sickle cell. And I come up to the person, oh, you have sickle cell, and then deny. Until you now say maybe, okay, say to them yourself that, oh, don't worry, I have sickle cell myself. So you can tell me. How do you address such issues? Buki.
I don't really see why that's an issue. I think that it's up to people to decide if they want to talk about it openly,
Hmm.
if they want to share their experience or share their story. It's a deeply personal thing. I think even apart from the so-called stigma and all these things,
Hmm.
it's like sometimes you just feel like, where do I start from? Like, the challenges are so many. It
Hmm.
affects people in so many different aspects of their lives. And so if people don't want to share, I'm actually very okay with that. I have some friends who have sickle cell and they don't talk about it or, do anything about it like that, which is okay. I don't think everyone has to be compelled
But what about,
to
let me
share
give you an
that.
example. Yeah, there are situations where I'm not saying that they should be just sharing to anybody around, but there are situations where they are like, I'm in school, in your boarding school, and I'm told not to tell anybody, nobody knows. Then I go into crisis, and because people around me don't understand what's going on, things get worse. I'm talking more of that kind of situation where they are dying in silence, they have issues, but because they don't want to talk about it, the issues are getting worse.
Hmm. Yeah, that's again, that's really just about educating people. And but I think with that kind of thing, there's nothing you can do. That can be that situation is applicable to any health condition or any secret.
Mm,
It's like if you take domestic violence, for example, you can, there are some people you're like, we know they are beating you every day, but they're like, me, no, and they're not beating me. I'm happy. So like, people cope. I think, people cope with things in different ways.
mhm.
It's just about, like, some people put up barriers, some people talk too much, some, people are just finding ways to cope. And
Okay.
it's just really, for always, we are a safe space, for people to come and talk when they are ready, and people to share their experiences
Yeah,
when they are ready. And again, this also comes, I think, if they're not sharing with the medical team, maybe it's also to do with the mistrust of the healthcare system. And
exactly.
doctors can say some very callous things as well.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
you see, we've heard so many situations of doctors, saying, are you a sickler? You don't look like a sickler. And you're like, but you're a doctor. You are the last person to be saying something like that. And those issues of mistrust in the healthcare system is part of what makes people, not share what it is that they're going through.
Yeah, yeah. Peter, did you hear the question?
No, no, ma. I couldn't.
Okay, we
My
were talking
network.
about people who are living in denial. They know they have it, but they are afraid to talk about it. But even because of that, they are suffering in silence. What do you have say? What do you have to say about that? What can you do to help such people? We're not saying look at the whole world, but like I gave an example. If somebody is in an environment where you're far away from your support system and something happens, how do they manage? So is it that they learn to start talking about it, even to one or two people, just for emergency purposes, or they just continue to just keep silent?
Okay, so you're saying if they lose their support system, like if family doesn't support them any longer.
No, 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 not lose in that sense, but like if they went far away from their support system in terms of their medical personnel, their family,
Oh,
and
okay.
like you're in a boarding school or you're in university or
Yeah.
like in a place that is far away from the typical support, and then suddenly you go into crisis. Not one person
Okay.
around
So
you knows what's going on.
yes, so I believe that parents should train their children to be independent of them, because that's the only way to help your child grow. Because
Mm,
I grew up having, because my mom used to sickle cell also, she there's no room for you not to be independent. You have to learn by force, by fire, whether you like it or not. So I grew up having to do everything that is done in that house, from fetching water to washing the clothes, washing the dishes, washing the
mm,
floor. In short, I tell people that I grew up doing all the things where I can do anything. I was not trained to be a liability, because you can't be a liability. Well, even me too, I'm not feeling too well. So why will you be a liability on my neck? And you're a guy for that matter. You are told that you are the head of the family. At the very that age, you are the one that I'm like, calm down. I'm not married yet. You know? So we are parents. I tell people parents that please train your child to be independent. Allow your child know what he needs to know to survive, not
mm,
because of the child, but because of you. Because I found out that some warriors have what we call entitlement mentality, because the parents have so protected them to a large extent that if their parents are not there, they just claim they want to feel like dying. I'm like, hey, you want to die? Please, by all means, because your parents can't be there all the time. Yes, you
true.
can't just wake up and say you died because your parents are not there. Those that their father parents died when they were giving birth, they survived. So it is, parents should try as much as possible to train their children to be independent of them. Let them have an independent mindset, build their self-esteem, build their capabilities. Okay, at an early age, your child likes singing, don't chastise your child, encourage him to sing. Your child wants is inquisitive about his health, don't say shut up, don't ever live with sickle cell. No, don't shut your child out of
saying don't tell people you live with sickle cell, because at the end of the day, this the same child that will bring your glory out. In short, the person that will bring your family out, and you'll be like, oh, if had I knew early, I'll have told your child. So
Yeah.
to train your child to know what he needs to know about his health, and perhaps you are not there, he knows what to do. So you don't, something happens to your child and you are maybe in Kaduna and you didn't tell your neighbor what is wrong with your child, and your child cannot do anything for himself, and your child dies, you now blame yourself that don't have killed my child. No, it is you forgot that every child is independent of his or her parents. So please, having a child that lives with sickle cell does not mean you should over pamper. Pampering them sometimes makes them a liability for you, and you regret, why did I do this? So we don't want you don't want you to get to that stage where you are angry at yourself for pampering your child. Train your child as every other child that is trained. So because the way I was trained, I tell my mom that you can't have somebody live with you. You can't employ, in short, you can't employ a maid, because I was trained as if I was a maid, because you do everything. You are coming conga, you do everything. In short, on Saturday morning, our parlor is this big. You will kneel down with brush and wash. Saturday morning, see, my grandpa has a policy: you have to wake up by 4:30 to clean the house. Food must be ready by 7 a.m. So you can't be a liability in the house. You have to work. So train your child to learn how to do all these things. But because we say, okay, let the child avoid crisis, let him do it in moderation. Your child says, I'm tired. Please let your child rest. Your child says, I can't do it now, I'll do it later. Please allow your child. Because when you start saying you are forcing your child, you wouldn't get the best of your child, and you would, that thing you told your child to do, you have to do it again yourself. So I tell my mom and dad, my mom, because I was trained, grew up with my mom, that you can't force me to do anything. You see, when you force, my grandpa knows, my grandpa likes that kind of thing. I'll tell him, I'll now do it, you'll not be okay. I'll do it like you'll not be, you will lose by. He won't like what I did because you forced me to do it. But when I do it one time, he'll be like, wow. So only nule by. So it is train your child to learn to do everything, but in moderation. But your child should be, when you are not there, when you are out, somebody sees your child like, omo gidi lo to. If you get that kind of comments later, that people know that you did your best with this child, that you see, it's better than making your child become entitled to what is not necessary. Because in the end, it will choke you to death, like Jomo Ifimile. So please, by all means, train your child independent. Let him learn all outdoors. If your child wants to play, let him play. Let your child be a child. But by all means, teach your child to know how to be good to himself.
All right, guys, if you have any comments, I forgot to say this. See my life, I was enjoying the conversation. Please post. Zadi was saying something which I don't understand. Zadi was saying, said that race is important to you. I don't know what race she was talking about.
Which race? Must you marry Igbo because you are Igbo? Please go and marry Fulani man and enjoy Fulani milk.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly.
Right, if you don't have any more questions, yeah. In fact, I said it was going to be 45 minutes, but I never ever make that. It's always over the threshold of 45 minutes. But I'll say any last comments, advice to people out there living with sickle cell, and then also to society as well, about people with sickle cell. Because I know today is the whole of Twitter is trending, because I just smiled because I really can't understand. We've been talking about these issues. Why is it suddenly trending? Because of a certain incident and a certain person.
Yes, because the person is in limelight, so he has to trend, please.
Okay,
By all means, bound to be in limelight. No, because he just gave hope to sickle cell warriors that you can be anything despite your condition. You can. It doesn't stop your dreams. It doesn't stop your aspiration. It doesn't stop your capabilities. Because now, even before he said this, I just hearing of it this night. Somebody was like, "Where in the world are you?" I'm like, please, I don't to watch Big Brother.
Yeah.
But I've known about him from like the beginning, and by middle of season, we already knew he was going to win. But when I heard it today, I'm like, okay. So somebody, okay, Dr. Olufumilaya on Twitter posted something this evening, and somebody was like, "You are mad. SCs are kidney company." I'm like, calm down. SCs also have pain. In short, we are even at the higher risk of having more complications than people who are SS. So please, that we are fine. We are fine. We know we are fine. I beg that we are fine. As for that is that is causing our body. I beg. You people should not come and say. When I people say it's murder form, I used to look at somebody. So I remember having a child with someone. I was like, yeah, you're lucky. Yeah, I'm lucky. Ma, please, I have complications too because I have a front that my front is to give hope to warriors, not to shrink them or give them fear. My front is to help them live better because I live a good life. So my complications are behind. My struggles are my. I tell people who want to become advocates, don't allow your struggle affect your advocacy. Don't allow your pain determine who you should be. You are more than I. So my quotes are: you are not your genotype. Your genotype should not define you at all. And you, as a sickle cell person, you can live optimally. You can live a very good and optimal life because my great grandmom died at over 80 something. My mom is 51. I know of the late Blaguda. She was a very close person. She died at 94. So you can't say there's no hope. You can live, you can be anything. So when I tell people that she had 6 children, I'm like, 6 children. How come? So we tell people the stories that there is hope for
Yeah.
you. There is hope. We know there's pain, but channel your pain for purpose. As a
Yeah.
simple said, channel your pain for purpose.
Exactly. Buki.
I think my message is more for advocates. Um,
Mhm.
and it's again two things. Number one is patience. Um, for a lot of people, there's an impatience for change, and I understand it. I feel like that as well. But if you compare sickle cell advocacy, for example, to the struggle for racial equality around the world, and
Exactly.
sometimes you might feel like 2020 we're still having issues about race. If you think about how far we have come, but then there's still a lot to do ahead. So it's important not to get weary because you just have to look back, even to just 50 years ago, and think about the plight of
Yeah.
Black people versus the plight of people now. And it's the same way with sickle cell. If you look back to 50 years ago, the reason why again that we are even seeing so many of all these different complications that come from sickle cell is because we're living longer. Before,
Mm-hmm.
people living with sickle cell didn't get into adulthood to be able to start having,
At all. Yeah.
all these complications, and it's only now that we're studying adult care for sickle cell. So that's the first thing, is patience and understanding that change, when you're measuring change, you actually measure it in hundreds of years. So measure your change in the last 100 years, where have we come? Or at least in the last decade. So at least now I'd say I've been doing advocacy for 10 years. We started staff in 2010, and it's 2020 now. And now, if I'm taking stock, I already see a change. I see a change in the language that we use and how we refer to ourselves, not as sicklers or as sickle cell warriors. And you have doctors, I was on a call with WHO the other day. The head of the WHO was saying sickle cell warriors. So the language change is there, the understanding change is there. So it's coming. It's just that we're often, as human beings, we're often impatient for change. So
Yeah.
I guess what I would say to advocates is that don't think about change and advocacy in days or years. Just think about it in
False sleep.
decades at the least, or 50, 40 years.
Exactly.
Where are we going? Where are we coming from?
Yeah, I think a lot of times advocates who are people living with sickle cell themselves, or families of people living with sickle cell, tend to think this way because of they put emotional issues, you know, around it. So they're looking at it from their own point. So it can be pretty challenging and frustrating when you're like, you've had this experience and you're trying to get people to not have that experience. But I always tell people, look, let's face it, if healthcare in Nigeria was on point, 80% of the challenges we have to talk about won't be so much like this. So I just keep some Julia says there is hope, and I agree with you. There is indeed hope for people with sickle cell and even just advocacy in general, because we've come a long way compared to where we started from. I remember growing up before, won't even hear anything about sickle cell. It was in 2005 when I launched my book and I started talking about it in radio and TV. And somebody was like, "Why? How can you be talking about it? You are brave. You are this. But all the things you are telling us is lies. That you hate your parents. You hate for what? You know." But and that is because there was a negative narration around it. But I think it's improving over the years, and we've been able to set a standard, and I think it will be growing and grow, and we just be to change people's mindsets and educate them better in their own understanding so that things would move on. Thank you so much for being on the program. Thank you for our audience. I apologize for the network. I know that's why a couple of us were dropping out. But hey, we're in Nigeria, so we just thank God for the little we can do. And I like to give us this. Sorry, the power is yes. At least we have it like maybe 12 hours or so in a day. Which is good. Which is good. So I like to leave us with this quote: give voice to what you know to be true. And do not be afraid of being disliked or exiled. I think that's the hard work of standing up for what you see. And it was said by Eve. So always give that voice. I know we are afraid about whether we are going to be disliked, but remember that whenever we're speaking up with our voice, we're not just speaking up for ourselves. We're speaking up to help another person who you may not know may need that help. So have a wonderful week. We'll see you on Saturday. And thank you again. This has been a production of Bye. This has been a production of Sickle Cell Advocacy and Management Initiative and supported by the Public Affairs section of the US Consulate. Till next time, have a great week.